Once upon a time, in a certain town, there were speculations about a certain house being haunted. The speculation came as a result that no tenants of that house lived beyond 1 year, and within 3 months of occupying the apartment, things would begin to turn upside down for the occupants. That would be followed by sickness. Some who were broke to pack out on time died in that apartment. That had been happening for a long time, and only the neighbors knew about it. The agent kept bringing in tenants without their knowledge of what had been happening in the apartments, and no one cared to make inquiries before renting it. Maybe because the house looked new and stood out within the neighborhood. People whispered about the apartment anytime a new tenant packed in. They knew there was a problem, but nobody knew why. One day, a young man named Kelma moved in. He was not like the others. He prayed every morning and night. He didn't know why, but every time he entered the kitchen, he felt strange. It was as if something was watching him. He started having dreams, dark dreams, but when he woke up, he couldn't remember them clearly. One night, he woke up feeling thirsty. He got out of bed, stretched, and walked to the kitchen to drink water. As he approached the door, he froze. There was a figure in the kitchen, giant shadowy ghost. It stood like a woman, but her feet did not touch the ground. She was cooking. Smoke curled from the pot on the fire, filling the room with a rotten smell. Kelma's heart pounded. He held his breath and stepped back slowly. But just then, the ghost turned its head. It sniffed the air. She knew he was there. Before he could run, the ghost vanished. The kitchen was empty again, but the fire was still burning. The pot was still bubbling. Kelma swallowed his fear and stepped closer. His hands shook as he lifted the pot's lid. What he saw made his stomach churn. Inside the pot were black wriggling worms. They were alive and they were growing, spreading fast, filling the pot like something hungry. Kelma gasped and turned to run, but he came face to face with the ghost. She stood before him, taller than before, her hollow eyes locked onto him. Then, blackout. Kelma woke up in the hospital, sweating and shaking. His heart was pounding in his chest. His eyes darted around the room as he shouted, "Ghost! Ghost!" The nurse rushed in. "Calm down, sir. You are safe." Safe? No, he wasn't safe. He could still see her hollow eyes in his mind. He could still smell the rotten stench from the pots. Just then, his colleague, Chris, entered the room. "Kelma, thank God you are awake." Kelma blinked, confused. "Chris, what happened?" Chris sighed. "I should be asking you. When you didn't show up at work, I called you, but your phone was off. Something told me to check on you. When I got to your apartment, I found you lying on the kitchen floor, unconscious." At the mention of the kitchen, Kelma's body stiffened. His breath quickened. "Chris, I saw her. The ghost. She was cooking." Chris frowned. "Ghost, cooking." Kelma grabbed his arm. "You have to believe me. I saw what she was cooking. It wasn't food. It was something evil." Chris exchanged a look with the nurse, who gave him a small nod before walking out of the room. "Kelma, maybe you need to rest. You've been through a lot. But Kelma shook his head. I know what I saw, and I have to go back. Chris' eyes widened. Go back? Are you crazy? After what happened? Kelma clenched his fist. I need to find out the truth. Chris sighed and ran a hand over his face. At least let me come with you. Kelma hesitated, then nodded. We wait for tonight. That night, after leaving the hospital, they both go to Kelma's apartment. Chris swallowed hard. Are you sure about this? Kelma took a deep breath and pushed the door open. The air inside was thick, heavy like something unseen was watching them, but they did not see anything throughout the night. The next morning, Kelma and Chris sat outside the apartment, talking to some neighbors. The sun was shining, but Kelma still felt a strange chill in the air after hearing what they were saying about former tenants of the apartments. How long has this been happening? Kelma asked, his eyes scanning the faces of the people gathered around him. An old man, Babatunde, cleared his throat. For years, my son. Nobody stays in that apartment for long. At first, they will be fine, but before 6 months pass, sickness will come. Some manage to live in time, others don't make it. A woman, Mama Faith, shook her head. A friend of mine lived there 2 years ago with her family. They left before their rent expired. They were always weak and coughing, but after they left, they all got better. The house is not ordinary. Chris folded his arms. Then why does the landlord still rent it out? Babatunde sighed. Nobody knows the landlord. Tenants pay through an agent. Nobody has seen the real owner for years. Kelma frowned. That's strange. I need to find him. I need to ask him what's wrong with this house. But how will you find him? Mama Faith asked. Kelma stood up. I will start with the agent. He must know something. Later that day, Kelma and Chris went to the agent's office. The man, Mr. Bassi, was sitting behind his desk, counting money. He looked up when they entered and smiled. Ah, my good tenant, how may I help you? Kelma didn't waste time. I want to see the landlord. Mr. Bassi's smile faded. The landlord? Why? There's something wrong with that apartment. I need to ask him some questions. Mr. Bassi shifted in his seat. Ah, my friend, don't stress yourself. The landlord is a busy man. Just manage the apartment. If there's any problem, I can help. Kelma leaned forward. I'm not leaving until you tell me where to find him. Mr. Bassi sighed and tapped his fingers on the desk. He looked around, as if checking if someone was listening. Then, in a low voice, he said, The landlord doesn't like visitors, but if you really want to see him, go to number 14 Oke Street. You might find him there. Kelma and Chris exchanged glances. They had found a lead. Without wasting time, they left the office and headed to Oke Street. When they got to number 14, Kelma and Chris sat in the dimly lit living room, listening carefully as the landlord, Mr. Kenneth, spoke. His voice was heavy with regrets. My sister, Tina, was a strong woman, he said, rubbing his hands together. She worked hard to build that house. She was the one who borrowed money, bought the land, and oversaw the construction. But her husband, Ifeanyi, he was a wicked man. Chris leaned forward. What did he do? Mr. Kenneth sighed deeply. At first, he treated her well, but when the house was almost finished, he convinced her to put his name as the owner. She trusted him. She thought he loved her. He shook his head. Immediately after taking possession of the house, he changed. He later married another woman and made Tina's life miserable. Kelma's hand clenched into fists. Why? Mr. Kenneth continued. Because she couldn't give him a son. Kelma was furious, and she didn't fight back. She wanted to, Mr. Kenneth said, his eyes filled with sorrow. But she loved that house too much. She didn't want to leave it. When Ifeanyi gave her a choice, either leave the house or stop working, she chose to stay. She quit her job thinking it would bring peace. But things only got worse. Chris shook his head. How? Mr. Kenneth's face darkened. The new wife turned her into a maid. She was forced to cook from morning till night. She barely had time to rest. The kitchen became her prison. Kelma felt a cold shiver run down his spine. And then, Mr. Kenneth looked away. She became sick, weak, but Ifeanyi didn't care. He refused to take her to the hospital. She suffered in silence until she died. A heavy silence filled the room. Chris swallowed hard, and after she died, Mr. Kenneth sighed. Ifeanyi buried her quickly and moved on with his life. But strange things started happening in the house. His new wife became sick, the same way Tina was. She left him and ran away. Ifeanyi himself grew weak and died mysteriously a few years later. Kelma and Chris exchanged glances. The pieces were finally coming together. Mr. Kenneth hesitated, then nodded. Before he died, he apologized. He admitted everything. He knew Tina suffered because of him. He knew she died in pain. Before taking his last breath, he gave me the house documents and told me to take care of it. Kelma placed a hand on his chin. Then that means Tina's spirit is not just haunting the house because of the pain she suffered. She's also angry that Ifeanyi died without facing real punishment. Chris sighed. So what now? How do we help her move on? Kelma turned to Mr. Kenneth. Did you ever perform any cleansing in that house? Mr. Kenneth shook his head. No, I haven't thought about it. Kelma exchanged glances with Chris. Then it's time we do something about it. We need to set Tina's spirit free. Days later, Kelma, Chris, and Mr. Kenneth returned to the house, determined to put an end to the haunting. They stayed until midnight, waiting in silence. Mr. Kenneth then stood at the entrance of the kitchen. His hands trembled as he spoke. Tina, my sister, please hear me. I know you were wronged. I know you suffered. But Ifeanyi, the man who caused you pain, is dead. He paid for what he did. Please forgive and let go. Let this house be at peace. For a moment, nothing happened. Then bang! The sounds of pots and plates crashed to the ground, echoed through the kitchen. The walls shook and heavy silence followed. Then a soft, sorrowful voice spoke from the darkness. It was Tina. Remove everything in this kitchen, she said. The utensils, the pots, the plates, they are all contaminated. Kelma, Chris, and Mr. Kenneth stood frozen, listening. Tina continued, her voice heavy with pain. I will only rest when my daughter is safe. She must live in this house, and whoever stays with her must never pay rent. A cold wind blew through the room. Then Tina's voice turned sharp. Kenneth, where is my daughter? Mr. Kenneth's face turned pale. He hesitated, looking down. Kelma stepped forward. What is she talking about? Chris frowned. You told us you inherited this house. You never mentioned a daughter. Then Mr. Kenneth swallowed hard. I sent her away. The air in the room grew heavier. Send her where? Kelma demanded. Mr. Kenneth's voice was barely above a whisper. She is working as a maid in someone's house. A strong wind blew through the room, slamming the kitchen door shut. Tina's voice trembled with anger. You sent my child away while you stayed and collected rent from my house. Kelma clenched his fist. Mr. Kenneth, how could you? Chris shook his head in disbelief. All this time she had a child, and you never said anything. Mr. Kenneth wiped his sweaty face. I thought it was the best. Kelma took a deep breath and turned towards the empty kitchen. Tina, I promise you, I will find your daughter. I will bring her back and make sure she has a good life. The wind in the room slowed. The lights flickered once, then steadied. Tina's voice, now softer, whispered, I will be waiting. Kelma turned to Chris. We need to find her daughter. Chris nodded, but where do we start? They both turned to Mr. Kenneth, who avoided their gaze. Kelma's voice was firm. Where is she? Mr. Kenneth hesitated, then finally muttered, her name is Onukwube, and she has been gone for years. Mr. Kenneth led Kelma to a quiet neighborhood where Onukwube had been living for the past 10 years. She worked as a housemaid for a woman known as Clara, who was strict and rarely let her out. When they arrived, Kelma was shocked to recognize Onukwube. It was someone he had met not too long ago. He had always found her kind and hardworking, but never knew about her past. Onukwube, he called out, stepping closer. Onukwube turned, her eyes widening in surprise. Brother Kelma, Uncle. Mr. Kenneth cleared his throat. Onukwube, my child, I have come to take you home. Onukwube frowned. Home? I don't have a home. Kelma stepped in. Yes, you do. Your mother's house. It belongs to you. Tears welled up in Onukwube's eyes. My mother? Kelma nodded. I will explain everything, but first let's go. With Clara's permission, Onukwube packed her few belongings and left with Kelma. Mr. Kenneth, ashamed of himself, quietly watched them go. Onukwube moved in with Kelma, and just as Tina had promised, things began to change. Kelma got a series of promotions, and his side business grew. He recorded more progress than ever before. Everything he touched seemed to flourish. He made sure Onukwube continued her education, supporting her through school until she graduated from the university. Over the years, he watched her transform from a young timid girl into a confident and beautiful woman. But something troubled Kelma. Though he admired Onukwube deeply, he could never bring himself to speak to her as anything other than a brother. He always reminded himself that he had promised her mother to take care of her, not to develop feelings. Still, his heart betrayed him. Every time she smiled at him, every time she spoke kindly to him, he felt something stir within him. One evening, as they sat on the balcony watching the sunset, Umuamaka turned to him and smiled. Kelma, I don't know where I would have been without you. You have done so much for me. Kelma forced a smile. I just did what was right. Umuamaka looked at him for a moment, as if she wanted to say something. But instead, she sighed and looked away. Kelma too wanted to speak his mind, but he held back. Little did he know, Umuamaka was also battling with her own feelings. Months passed, and the bond between Kelma and Umuamaka grew stronger. They shared everything: laughter, struggles, and dreams. Yet, neither of them dared to speak of one thing that had been lingering between them: love. One evening, Umuamaka told Kelma that she had found a man who wishes to marry her. Kelma's heart pounded on hearing that. A man, Kelma shouted. No way, no man is allowed to marry you other than me. Umuamaka was surprised to hear him say that. She had been expecting him to make a move, all to no avail. She couldn't believe her prank could work magic just like that. There was no man anywhere. She wanted to know Kelma's mind. Kelma, being caught, went ahead and proposed to Umuamaka. They informed Mr. Kenneth and also his family. Kelma's family was overjoyed. They had taken Umuamaka as their own daughter and had long suggested to Kelma to marry her. Their wedding was beautiful, attended by friends, neighbors, and even Mr. Kenneth, who had finally made peace with his past. Kelma and Umuamaka lived in her mother's house, fulfilling Tina's final wish. From there, they prospered and built more properties. Strangely, from the day Umuamaka stepped into the house as the rightful owner, the haunting stopped. The kitchen remained peaceful, and the strange sickness never returned. It was as if Tina's spirit had finally found rest. And so, Umuamaka and Kelma lived happily ever after, proving that love, kindness, and doing what is right will always lead to a beautiful ending. From this story, it is clear that it is good to do what is right, even when no one is watching. Kelma could have ignored Umuamaka's situation, but he chose to help, and in return, he was blessed beyond measure. Greed and selfishness have consequences. Ifeanyi tried to profit from Tina's suffering, but in the end, justice prevailed. We also learned that true love is patient. Kelma and Umuamaka's love grew naturally over time. They waited, and when the time was right, they found happiness in each other. This is Umma's story time. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe. I am Amarachi Ihoma, the young storyteller.